Hey everyone, it's time for another edition of Beaver Banter.
Beaver Sports Talk lives here.
It is another episode of the Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner. That's Ian Rivers. And Ian, another guest here to break down CCHA tournament play, because boy, was it a really fun one for the Bemidji State Beavers over the weekend. Ian, why don't you introduce our guest?
Yeah, this is Jack Hittinger. I'm sure many Bemidji fans will know who he is from his days back at it was the Pioneer, right, Jack?
Yes.
Yeah, so back in his Bemidji days writing for the Pioneer. Now he's with USCHO covering what I believe is the CCHA as a whole, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I do some other stuff here and there, but it's mostly CCHA. Trying not to focus too much on the Beavers, just even though I do end up watching most of their games still.
Right.
You know, it's hard to quit. You know, once you get hooked on them, it's really hard to go away, especially after a weekend like on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where Bemidji State was able to come from behind and get a reverse sweep, the opposite of Ian's prediction on last show, right?
Yeah, I was 100% incorrect. I mean, anybody who listened to the show last week knows that I predicted that the Beavers would win on Friday and then break our hearts, disappointingly losing on Saturday and Sunday. And they did the exact opposite, you know. Friday night's game was kind of like that. I mean, they started off the game strong and then finished it really poorly. So if you take my prediction down to just a one game sample size on that Friday night game, then yeah, I was correct about that. But it's interesting, guys. I'm just looking at the matchups for Saturday right now, and I'm seeing a 4-1 Tommy's win over the Bowling Green Falcons already scheduled in there for the Saturday series on the CCHA website. So I guess that's a good thing. Yeah, so they have some updating to do on their website. I'm sure Perry will get to the bottom of that as fast as he can. But if I see a Tommy's 4-1 scoreline, I might raise an eyebrow this weekend. But yeah, Jack, I don't know how much of this series you were able to catch. I'm pretty sure you said Saturday you weren't able to catch most of it, but how much of Friday or Sunday's game were you able to see?
Watched half of Friday. I didn't see any of Saturday, but my wife was texting me updates while I was on the plane. I was in Texas visiting my parents last week, so that's why I was unable to see that game. And then I watched all of Sunday's game. So I saw probably a good 3/4 of the series. Obviously on Friday, I think it was kind of sort of a back and forth game, and they lost that game, but they also weren't they leading at some point in that game and 1-0.
They were
lost 3-1. Yeah. So I was kind of excited that when I was watching, I was like, oh man, 1-0. It was 1-0 after 2, right? And then Augustana comes back and scores 3 in the third. Is that correct?
Yeah, 3 pretty quickly. Like it when it fell apart because yeah, you were right. It was pretty back and forth. The first 2 periods were it looked like a playoff series, really dicey. Neither team had like super great chances to score. And then the Beavers kind of capitalized on a shorthanded chance with Kirkland Irie, assisted by Jackson Judding, probably the MVP of the weekend in Judding. And then, yeah, it just kind of the wheels fell off. There was a couple of lapses defensively in the third period, and they ended up losing the game 3-1. Looks like all 3 of those goals came within like a 4-minute stretch in the third period. And it just kind of, it was not something that really surprised us because it's something we've seen at stretches out of this team for the course of the whole season.
Yeah. You know, it's something that I think I've noticed just thinking back. I mean, when the wheels fall off, they really come off in some of these games, like against Mankato last 2 weeks ago. That second period in Mankato was, I mean, the difference. They just kind of had those 3 goals right away, and then at the post-game interview, Tom said that he was still not happy about it, so I'm sure that he talked to them a little bit following that sort of collapse. And maybe on the bench on Friday is going, oh no, maybe what I said didn't come through. But obviously they were able to pick it back up on Saturday and Sunday and pull ahead for the win.
And, for them to get this win, obviously, it is a big upset considering just the success Augustana has had this season. Just from a neutral perspective, kind of looking at this thing, is it just a little bit of Augustana maybe quite wasn't ready for, this the first year of tournament play? You're just, it's a little bit of you kind of welcome to the CCHA tournament moment. Is this Bemidji State was just better than their record was and they came on top? What are kind of, as this series comes to an end, what was kind of your, as a whole, just kind of your view of it?
I can kind of see that, especially, Augustana was done with CCHA play 2 weeks before everybody else. They played Mankato in the last year. They played their Tech in the last series. I can't remember who they played in that last series. And then they were done. And then they played Alaska and got swept, and then they had a week off. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm sure Garrett Reboyne would have loved to be playing all those weekends, but that's just how the schedule played out. And I don't think they knew, obviously they didn't know that they were going to be joining the league, but when you sort of play your last two, when you play your last regular season series 2 weeks before everybody else, and then the next weekend is meaningless, basically, but you're playing an Alaska team that has nothing to play for. You're still playing for the jersey, but you're, mostly just playing to play. I feel like that type of game sort of loses its intensity. Whereas, the last 2 weeks of the season, the Beavers, who were they playing? Bowling Green and Michigan Tech, or Bowling Green and Mankato, and everybody's playing for playoff positioning and to be hot in the playoffs. Whereas your Augustana, you're playing against an Alaska team that loves to goon it up, especially late in the season when they don't have anything to play for. Like I think we talked about a little bit. So I think it was just kind of a weird 2-week period for them. And obviously, I'm sure they wouldn't want to make excuses about those sort of things, because you just have to play the schedule that you're dealt. But at the same time, I do think the experience factor plays a role. Saratori's been here before with many teams playing in playoff games. Garrett, I think, obviously he's played in some at St. Cloud, and he's coached as an assistant in many of them with the Gophers and St. Cloud and some other teams. But when you're the head coach, it's just a little bit of a different thing, and maybe you need to be more experienced at figuring out what your guys need to do in that situation when you're the head of the program. And obviously, that experience matters. I think Augustana's really good, and I think they're going to be a problem next year. So hats off to them, because I think if they would have won a couple more games, they'd be still playing in the NCAA tournaments. I think obviously they sort of ran out of steam and lost that at-large bid, but they were up there for a while with the chance.
Yeah. It's good that you brought up the fact that Tom has been in this spot before, and I think maybe it was just me that kind of thought like this, but you look at the tournament success in the not the Mason Cup, but all the way back to the WCHA playoffs, a few years ago at this point, and it hasn't culminated in the Broadmoor Trophy or the Mason Cup. So you look at it and you say, well, we're not really a tournament team. We don't play well when it comes to the tournament, because we lost in Mankato a couple years ago. We lost last year on home ice to Michigan Tech. But this is the 5th year out of the last 6 that the Beavers have been to the Mason Cup or, WCHA semifinals. And, who knows how many championship games they would have been to. I know one of them was canceled due to the COVID era coming in. Yeah. They had a pretty good chance against Bowling Green in that semifinal, I would have believed. So they're definitely, even though it hasn't culminated in that grand trophy and automatic tournament berth at the end of it, they've still been consistent in the tournament over the last 6 years, outside of a very injured stint. And at the end of the season a couple of years ago, where they fell to the 5 seed on the last day of the season and then had to travel to Marquette. And that was just a whole mess of injuries and everything else that season. So I think it was a good, Augustana, a series like this will help any of those players that stick around and decide to play for Augustana again next year, any of the underclassmen that are going to be there. It's a learning experience for them. It was their first playoff series as a program. So that's something that'll build with their community. And they're gonna be back. They're gonna be good. They've got talented players. They've got a really good coach. But yeah, I mean, a good series win for the Beavers. It looked really dicey. They're down 1-0. Saturday happens, and they get up 2-0 in the second period with a couple of goals from Riley Funk and Jackson Jutting, and you're like, all right, cool. I think we might have a chance to even this series. And then almost immediately, Quinn Rudrud gets a goal back, and it's like, okay, well, at least we got the goal to get a buffer. And then you see them give up a goal with less than 20 seconds left in the period, and it's tied going into, the third period. And you're thinking, just like you said, Jack, when the wheels fall off, they really fall off. And so you're a little bit worried about how that third period's going to go. And when the Beavers need a goal, who else can they count on but Tony Fulmer to come through, and he gives them a 3-2 lead. Adam Fleming, less than a minute later, gets his first of 2, spoiler alert, game-winning goals just under a minute later. And then Nace Langus gets a goal with about half of the third period left. But the Beavers were able to lock down defensively and play some really solid hockey in front of Matthias Scholl, who I don't think has gotten enough flowers necessarily for the way he played this weekend. He played outstanding at stretches this weekend, and he's a big part of the reason that the Beavers are moving on.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was just looking back at Tony Fulmer's stats. He's got 3 goals in his career. Yeah, and that big one against Augustana. I think he scored a big one last year too, I want to say.
Sorry, I think I know that one of them is against stats. Ferris. Other than that, I don't remember the other one.
Ferris. You're right.
Because I think it was one that we couldn't see because the Ferris broadcast was being Ferris State's broadcast at the time.
Yeah, but anyway,
yeah.
Sorry, I missed what you were saying about some of the other players here. Obviously, Adam Fleming, I think, has had a really good second half of the season, getting those 2 clutch goals. Feel like maybe some people in the Discord were not necessarily happy with his production in the first half of the season, but I think he's played pretty well second half, even though he doesn't necessarily have all the goals to show for it.
Right.
Now I'm trying to find. Sorry,
no worries.
I'm just trying to look at these stats here.
Adam was definitely one of the 2 guys. We had Jared on around the midway point of the season and talked, and we didn't necessarily want to bring up too many people by name, but 2 of the names that were brought up have been 2 of the hottest players for the Beavers over the course of the second half. One of them was Adam Fleming, the other being Casper Magnuson. And both of those players, the point production has jumped up tremendously in the second half. I don't remember exactly what they were at heading into that interview we had with Jared around the Duluth series around Christmas time. But yeah, both of those players have been particularly good in the second half.
It looks like Adam before January, he had 1 goal and 2 assists, and now he's added 5 and 13. So he's gotten up there. Since had some big ones, especially those 2 against Augustana. Had one against BG. Was he the game winner against BG? He might have scored the game winner. I can't remember.
Yes. Yep.
So I think one of those ones against North Dakota, I think, was pretty big. So maybe even if he's not necessarily scoring the goals, when he scores them, they've been pretty big for them. And who's the other guy that you said? I'm sorry.
Matthias Scholl, goaltender.
Oh yeah, Scholl's been much better, I think. Obviously, that game against Mankato, where he got ran a little bit, I think that seemed like that was more Zeratori trying to send a message to his team than punishing Matthias. But I think he's been pretty good in general, aside from that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jack, as somebody who's had a lot of experience with Bemidji State hockey, you've covered a lot of stuff. Just for people listening, just kind of remind them of the times that you covered the team for the paper, and just kind of talk about where this weekend series against Augustana ranks and kind of some of the more all-time moments since Bemidji State has become a Division I hockey program.
Yeah, I moved to Bemidji in 2012, so it was the last year of the old WCHA. It was the first season that I covered, and then I left the daily beat 2016-17. So that was the McNaughton Cup win for the WCHA. So it's been almost 15 years. I've seen some. I think the first couple years maybe that I saw them, they just didn't do very well in the playoffs. The first 2 years they got swept by Ferris State both years. Ferris was pretty good that year. That was probably the last time Ferris was really like the program in the league. I do think that as far as playoff victories go, that series against when they won the McNaughton Cup, they beat Northern in 3 games, which was a pretty dramatic series, that one. And then they ended up losing to Bowling Green in the next round, so that was kind of disappointing. I would say obviously the past 3 years as far as conference tournament playoffs go have been probably the best stretch, or 3-4 years I guess have been the best stretch as far as conference tournament success that they've had. I mean, 21-22, they went all the way to Mankato in that infamous Mason Cup final game. Then, I mean, the year before that, it was Northern Michigan. That series that you mentioned, Ian, where they slipped to the 5 seed and just got swept, and a lot of injuries that season. Then, but I mean, last year, some pretty memorable series is the 1 seed in the Sandwich Center. I mean, I think those are probably, from my memory, just like the most electric sort of playoff games that they've had, because they were the 1 seed all the way through, and those last 2 games especially was like packed crowd, and even though they lost to Tech, it was still a really fun game to watch. This series against Augie, I mean that it's up there, one of the best comebacks, at least for a playoff series, 3-game series that I can remember. I can't really remember them ever doing that before.
I think they did it against Bowling Green in 21-22. I think they started off with a loss on Friday and then came back and won the next 2. I could be wrong about that, but I did just look that up like before the Sunday game so I could tweet about it.
I'm looking it up right now.
I'm pretty sure that was the last one.
They did lose that first game 2-1.
Yeah. But you're right about like the atmosphere of last season's tournament being so good because they were at home. If you think about over the last 6 years, how many runs they've made, I mean, 2018 or whatever it was, they were, or no, the first one they went to the semifinal would have been, like kind of a shortened season tournament, or no. Sorry, the first one they went to would have been the COVID year, so it got canceled, so they weren't able to play at home against Bowling Green. The next year, it was like at a neutral site, and they lost to Lake Superior State.
Yeah.
And then every one of the other ones has been on the road. They went to Houghton before they won on the road against the Huskies to go to Mankato for that dramatic game. And then, last year would have been the home run, and all those games, leading up to the win streak building up and the dramatic games against Mankato that they won 6-0 to clinch the McNaughton Cup. Just that season building to that playoff run, even though, like you said, they lost, and it could have really, cemented that season in kind of Beaver hockey immortality, up there with some of those, even the Frozen Four run, perhaps. It would have been awesome, but even without that win, it still was probably, to my knowledge, the best tournament run we've had so far.
Yeah, because I had to remember to look back. Even the last time they won the McNaughton Cup in the old WCHA, they were able to host Northern in that first round and they won. But then that semifinal game, they also hosted BG and they got swept. So
I was at all 5 of those games.
Yeah, and I think I remember that first game. That first BG game was an overtime game, and they lost. And then they just didn't have the momentum back, which kind of killed them a chance. I don't know. Anyway, that Augustana one, I think, to be able to do that against the 2 seed, a team like Augustana, knowing how they played against Augustana previously, I mean, they split the series, but I don't know if they looked particularly impressive when they were there last time. It was just kind of a Didn't they win in a shootout or something? When
It was an overtime
regular
win.
season? Yeah,
It was an overtime win where they gave up 3 1-goal leads
yeah,
in the game, and then they went to overtime and got the winner, I think, is what it was.
yeah.
And then,
they lost
losing like
in
5-1 or something in the
5 to
second
1.
game.
So to be able to do that against them, I think that's a pretty impressive win. Obviously, you would have preferred to see that happen at home in front of the home fans, but I think to do it on the road makes it pretty dramatic, and it sets up obviously another matchup with Mankato, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a couple minutes.
Yeah, why don't we jump right into that series against Mankato? Or I guess, I keep calling it series, but it's a 1-game playoff, and in one game, anything can happen in college hockey. And of course, Bemidji State is, if you, like you said, the one period against Mankato on the Saturday didn't go very well. But other than that, Bemidji State has played Mankato generally tough. And me and Ian talked about this on the show a couple weeks ago. Bemidji State has played historically pretty well down at Mayo in Mankato, and just kind of for Bemidji State to come away with a victory. What are some things that are going to have to happen on the ice for Bemidji State to get to the Mason Cup championship for the second year in a row?
Well, I think Matthias has to play like he played that first game against Mankato early in the season, that 1-0 shutout. I know everybody was talking about that streak when he did it and was like, how is he going to keep doing this? Well, obviously, Mankato with Rhett Pitlick and the offense they have, that's not going to last very long. But like you said, it's a 1-game shot. If you can get a hot goalie, I think you have a real shot. And we know that Matthias has the capability to do that against Mankato. I haven't talked to him. It seems like he probably maybe likes going up against Mankato. He gets it for those games. I don't know what his record is against Mankato. That'd probably be something to look up just for our own edification, because it seems like it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to have to play well. I was watching actually the Mankato head coach Luke Strand's press conference from, I think it was this morning. I watched the YouTube stream of that, and Jared actually was on the press conference, and he asked him about special teams and how strong Bemidji State's special teams have been. And Coach Strand was like, yeah, they've been really good on the power play. We need to not contribute to their offense, and we need to stay out of the box. So if the Beavers can maybe draw some penalties, try and get that power play fired up, because it's been so good the past 6 games or whatever, 8 games. I don't know. They've been really good. I think they have a real shot if they can score some goals, and if Matthias can keep the shots out. I would say, obviously, their PK has been pretty good, but I would say this weekend's just taking dumb penalties, I think, is probably one thing that I'm sure is driving Tom crazy. When you have 4 or 5 too many men on the ice penalties in a series, that's not ideal.
Yeah.
Those are definitely preventable. That's not even like a judgment call where it's like the ref screwed us. That's like, if you do that many times, then that's on you, in my view.
Right. Yeah.
Because I know there was some question. I know Quinn went to the box a couple times, and people were saying there were some questionable calls on him. I think didn't he have 3 penalties on Saturday or Sunday, something like that? And I know
the people questioning was Ian. Ian was questioning all weekend.
Okay, I was trying to be charitable to Ian, but I guess you'll throw one.
No, I'm co-host. I think Noah was the one that took the bench minors for the too many men penalties as well. So he spent.
He's not really a penalty killer, so
yeah, exactly. So I think he spent 10 minutes in the box this weekend.
You still don't want to take those penalties either way, because they're preventable.
Yeah.
Especially, too many men penalties are obviously preventable, more than if it's a judgment flashing type call. You know what I mean? But I think those are the 2 keys. You don't necessarily need to score boatloads of goals. In fact, you probably aren't going to be able to do that against Alex Tracy. But if you can get a power play, get a bounce on the power play, I think you're in good shape. I don't know if I would bet all my money on that, but because Alex Tracy is still really good, and I think I don't even know who was talking about it, but some of Alex Tracy's numbers are even better than Dryden McKay's numbers when he won the Hobie Baker. So he's good, but he's beatable. And I think the Beavers showed that if they can get on the power play, that's their best chance to beat him.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, the special teams wasn't talked about enough, I guess, either this weekend. The 12 for 12 on the penalty kill. And like you said, it's uncharacteristic for a team like Bemidji State to take 12 penalties in 3 games, just because that's one of the things they're best at, is just not taking penalties. And it helps when the penalty kill statistically before last weekend wasn't very good. But last weekend, they really stood up to the test and killed off, including some of those, 2 of those, I think Lucas said on his kind of player cards and outreads, 2 of them were the major penalties late on Friday that they were kind of just skating around trying to kill the rest of the clock so that we really didn't have a chance to come back. But yeah, it was a good weekend. Noah Quinn, to his credit, man, all of that, all those penalties, all that, junk that he took on Sunday, and he fought through it mentally and was able to get that tipped in goal that was just a beauty. And I mean, I have an unbelievable ability to jinx this team positively, because I think I was looking up from my tweet of saying that was one of the worst power plays I've seen when your back is against the wall, your season's on the line. And as I was hitting send, Vince Corcoran threw the shot in there, and Quinn tipped it behind Josh Kotai. So credit to them for tying the game and then, winning it in overtime. Mankato is going to be tough because, like I said last week, you could play this team and you could have a 0-win season. You'd be 0-30, and I still think we'd play Mankato tough if we played them in the first round of the series. And vice versa. I think Mankato, they could be, having a struggling season. It's still going to be a tough series just because these teams play each other so often. It feels like every time you come up to a big spot, it's almost always Michigan Tech or Mankato. And here we are again. The other thing that I guess needs to be talked about is the other semifinal is St. Thomas and Bowling Green. And that is 3 hours before the start time of our game. So we didn't want to talk about it too much last week. I said, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll see how it lines up. Well, folks, it lined up like that. If St. Thomas wins that first playoff game, the first semifinal, I should say, the second semifinal will be for the automatic qualifier to the NCAA tournament, regardless of who wins the Mason Cup. So this game might even have bigger stakes than we realize just 3 hours before tip-off, or puck drop, I should say, not tip-off. But yeah, it's going to be a big game. I'll be there, and God help me if this game goes into overtime. I'm going to be monitoring the nets and how well they're tucked into the ice.
Yeah, I'm thinking about going. I'm still not sure yet, but that I wonder if Dylan Chi is going to be there. Just thinking out loud. He might be.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it is, they'll know sort of before the game, or will know before the game what the situation is. I'm almost wondering if either coach can talk about that with their team. Probably not. I think it's probably want to focus on the game at hand and not worry about what's happening in the other game. And even if it is St. Thomas in the Mason Cup final, I think every coach wants to win the trophy. Every school wants to win the trophy. So you don't want to make it to the Mason Cup final and then lose again. Sort of the ultimate way of backing into the NCAA tournament, which would be objectively pretty funny, no matter who it happens to. But especially for Bemidji State, because I think it would just be, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say. I don't know if it would feel good for Bemidji State fans after the way last year ended with losing to Michigan Tech at home. But it is kind of it might be some sort of satisfaction. Like, well, we didn't make the tournament last year with a really good team that we probably should have made the tournament with. This year, the team took a little bit of a step back, but we're in the tournament despite losing. I don't know. I just think that's kind of funny. And it might make some opposing fans mad. So that's also maybe a plus for some of you guys that are the diehards in the Discord.
Right. Yeah, I might have to jump into a certain other Discord and start making some noise if we. Yeah, that would be just like the most Bemidji State hockey thing to do. I think is to have the game at home last year and not get it done. And then, you're a mid-40s pairwise team this year, and then you back in because of a technicality with the conference tournament.
And it would also be really funny, too, if they won their first-round game against BC or Michigan State or whoever, too. Like, that would also be very funny, and that would make Michigan Tech fans very mad since they have not won a tournament game since the 80s.
Flashing back to the 2021 game against Wisconsin, I mean, geez,
yes.
there's a lot of that. It's a lot of that same vibe.
Yes, I think that would be very funny to me, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
Last question for you here, Jack, and we'll let you get out of here unless you have anything else, Ian. But I was just going to ask, is there anything else kind of about that first round of the CCHA tournament that's kind of stood out to you, or has it pretty much just kind of been what you've expected? Just kind of give us your thoughts on kind of the tournament as a whole to this point.
I did think that more of those games would go 3, or more of the series would go 3 games. I thought maybe there would be another upset. I thought if there was going to be one, it would probably be Michigan Tech against BG, just because those teams have played some good games this year. But obviously, BG being at home, it sounded like, I think the students were on break the week before, so they were back. So it sounded like it was a pretty good atmosphere at their home rink, and I watched the end of Friday's game when they won in overtime, and thought that was a pretty good game. Did get to see me of Saturday, but Bowling Green looks pretty good too, especially down the stretch. I think they're a team that's pretty dangerous, especially like you said, when you have the one-shot semifinal and you get this far. I think any team has a plausible chance of winning. Going all the way, and I think Bowling Green especially looks good. Obviously, St. Thomas, I didn't even realize until I looked at it today, they're 14-3-1 since the start of January, which is insane to me. I didn't even clock it that they had been going on that kind of heater. I think their 3 losses have been to Mankato, Bowling Green, and Bemidji. So that's another thing that they played really well against everybody else. Lucas Wallen and Liam Malmquist have been insane, just like reeling off points. I think Malmquist had 5 goals last week against Ferris, so he's good. Both those guys are really good. I think St. Thomas. I mean, like any of these matchups for any of these teams in the final is going to be good games. I think. Obviously, as Beaver fans, you want to win and want probably to play St. Thomas just because it makes the road to the tournament easier. But just from what I've seen of the playoffs, I think all 4 of these teams look really good, and it should be a lot of fun no matter what happens. But that's about all I got. I didn't see that much of the other games, and I didn't see anything on Saturday because I was on the plane. So I was able to stay. I had the Southwest free texting enabled, so my wife was texting me the updates like every 5 minutes of the Beaver game, and that's about it.
Right on.
All right, Jack, where can people check out your work if people want to see the things you're doing over at USCHO? Just what's the good way for people to interact with the stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, everything's on USCHO.com. I usually try and post things online. I'm not really on Twitter anymore, so I don't post things there. I'm on Blue Sky. I post things there. And I'm pretty active in the Discord, and I'm also in the tech Discord as well. So if anyone wants to yell at me there, feel free to do that. They also need more Beaver fans in there. So if you guys want to join the tech Discord as well, start some shenanigans, I think the tech fans would actually welcome that.
Yes.
We got to figure out who gets drafted to go into that Discord.
It's most of the time it's okay. The game threads are insane. I think the game threads on your guys' Beaver Banter ones are pretty decent, but the tech fans are just they're a special kind of dedicated, I guess you could say.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, look at tomorrow. I think I'll have the preview for the semifinals. I talked to 3 of the 4 coaches. I didn't get a chance to talk to Tom yet. Just the schedule didn't line up. So hopefully I can talk to him next week after if they win. So look for that tomorrow, and I'll be around. Maybe I'll be in Mankato if anyone wants to hang out.
USCHO's Jack Hittinger, a former Bemidji Pioneer sports editor, here joining us with all the stuff, talking about Bemidji State hockey, CCHA hockey, and all just everything going on with a huge Bemidji State win and a huge Bemidji State game coming up on Saturday against Minnesota State. Jack, this is your first appearance on the podcast, so first off, thanks for hopping on, and we hope to get you back on later throughout the hockey season, hopefully talking about some more Bemidji State success throughout this tournament and hopefully one more.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know if your listeners can't see this, obviously, but I'm wearing my Bemidji hat that I found at the grandma's antique store up in Bemidji. I was like, oh, I have to buy that hat. It's got Paul and Babe on it. So I've been wearing it around Shakopee, showing my Bemidji pride. So
I was going to say, you get props for wearing the hat.
Yeah, I've still got connections to Bemidji. We go up there all the time. Maggie's an alum, so I feel like I'm basically an alum because most of my friends are. So even though I didn't go to BSU, it's basically my second alma mater. So, and anytime the Beavers do well in sports, I'm rooting for them, and that's why I like listening to you guys, so I can sort of keep track of what's going on with all the other sports.
Yeah, we've adopted you in. You are an honorary member. You are welcome in. Jack Hittinger, thanks for joining the program. We'll see you next time, all right?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Once again, want to give a huge shout out to Jack for hopping on the podcast and talking about just a huge Bemidji State hockey win. Ian, I still can't believe it. It was a really just awesome win for that program, and super, super nice to be able to be playing in the semifinal weekend once again, like it's kind of been a tradition the last 6 or 7 years here, which has really been fun, and to just put Augustana in their place, albeit for one season, just to remind them that they haven't quite arrived yet to Division I hockey is still a little bit of a nice feather in the cap to wear for Beaver fans. So other than that, there's some other stuff that's going on with Bemidji State sports that we need to catch up on. Last week, we had a great conversation with Lucas talking about the series and previewing it against Augustana, in which he was the only one to predict they would win. We're not going to talk about that anymore. But we didn't get a chance to cover some of the other teams whose seasons came to a close. And let's start with women's hockey. Ian, they came to a close against Wisconsin in the first round of the WCHA playoffs. I think if there was a quick way to describe the first season of the Amber Frickland era, would be the on-ice product, but the vibes are much better than they were a season ago.
Yeah, the on-ice product is a little bit better than it was last year. Obviously, they won one more game than last year. It sucks that it ended on a sour note with kind of getting boat raced by Wisconsin a couple of times. We were hoping to keep that series at least a little bit closer. But yeah, like you said, the vibes of the program and the overall, where they're headed, I think feels a lot better than it did a couple of seasons ago, kind of heading down the stretch. So I am excited for that, era of the Beaver women's hockey program to start, because I think it was a successful first year under head coach Amber Frickland.
Yeah, exactly. And, just to have a new voice, a new direction, and just kind of some new momentum. Again, it's nothing against Coach Scanlon and things like that, but just more of a, it felt like it's run its course. It was time for a new voice, time for a new thing to breathe a little bit of new life into the program. And if that was all the first season is just, hey, just get the vibes straightened out and get things feeling like, okay, this is kind of what this is what the future can be envisioned as. I think that was a goal. They were able to win more games than they did a season ago. So on ice, better than last year, vibes better than last year. And it just feels like there's an overall vision for the program to see that really helps. So moving along, talking about men's basketball, they had their season come to an end against St. Cloud State in the opening round of the tournament. We talked about, hey, get to the Pentagon and see what happens. And they weren't quite able to do that. And I just think overall, Ian, it was kind of the story of the season. This was a nice team on paper that just could never quite find a way to put two halves together consistently. And it's basically what you saw in that final game of the year against St. Cloud State.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a up and down game for sure. I mean, they started off and they were pretty competitive throughout the first half. And then I think they had that run to start the second half where the wheels fell off. And then Bemidji State got really hot and brought themselves back within a couple of points. And then it just wasn't enough at the end of the game. I mean, both teams shot really poorly from the field. Bemidji State, 41%. St. Cloud, 34.5%. Bemidji State with 16 turnovers, though, and we're talking about a team that doesn't really turn the ball over that much in Bemidji State on average, at least. That's definitely something that stinks. And it just wasn't the season that you were hoping to have. We brought up the momentum that this program thought that it had a couple of seasons ago with, John Sutherland sticking around for another couple of years, and it never culminated into another tournament run quite like they had a couple of seasons ago, which is unfortunate, but there's still some really good pieces on this team, and going forward, we'll see what we can do. And the transfer portal is always open. That can be a negative, but it seems like we brought in a couple of solid pieces in the transfer portal the last couple of years. So hopefully we can do that again and have some better luck next year with some more consistency from a game to game and even a half to half, situation like we kind of talked about with Alex a few weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. And you look, Pekarich was as a guy who's gotten more and more minutes, and you've seen him grow, especially as a 3-point shooter. Like, that's a really nice piece for Bemidji State to have for the future. And, Tate Olson took another step. You look at just some of the other guys that they have around. Like you said, Bemidji State usually does pretty well bringing in transfers, especially in that junior college game. They always find a way to bring in a veteran college player who will end up being one of their higher minute players throughout the course of a season. They always feel like they do a really good job finding that as kind of some plug and play guys to put into their team. It's just more of losing Sutherland is going to hurt, because that was just a guy who you built this team's identity around. And you can make a case that the reason that they weren't able to get the goals that they thought they could get was because he got hurt. And you build all summer building around building around Sutherland, and then he gets hurt. And then middle of the season, you kind of have to figure out how to play without a guy who you built your team around. So, that's the caveat for that team. They didn't meet the goals that we set. They didn't meet the goals probably that they set. And this isn't excuse making for them, and I'm sure they'll tell you that too. But just in reality, you built it around one of your best players being healthy, and not that he was unhealthy a lot of the year, but enough to really just kind of get the wheels messed up a little bit. And they never just were able to, because Sutherland came back for a little bit, kind of re-aggravated some stuff. And then by the time he finally got fully healthy and everybody got behind him, it just wasn't quite enough time to really materialize into the team they thought they could become.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what my thoughts are. And you never know how the season can go. Maybe they have more of that consistency in some of those close games that they dropped early in the season, and really heartbreaking fashion could have been a little bit better. And there's other things that could have fixed that too. But yeah, it wasn't quite the season that they were hoping to have. Stuff happens, teams are definitely, they're preseason polls for a reason. You still have to go out and play the games. Unfortunately for this team, they just couldn't live up to the preseason expectations that, like you said, I'm sure they set for themselves, as well as people outside the program set for them. So back at it next year. They've got all summer to try to regroup and come back next November with the, what the hell is the Jim Harbaugh quote that he said? A ferocity unknown to mankind or something like that. I can't remember what it was after that playoff game, but yeah, they'll be back.
There's always next year.
The Minnesota Classic.
There's
no way he just pulled it on the basketball program, bro.
The Brooklyn Dodgers had a saying, there's always next year. That's been pulling it out. They've been pulling it out for almost a century.
Yeah,
and we will keep chugging along. And it'll be interesting. Obviously, this is notwithstanding, we don't, to this moment, we don't know of anybody that's transferred out of Bemidji State men's basketball or transferred in. Again, I don't have the information in front of me on when windows would open, or obviously people can informally announce that they are leaving. But as far as anything official, we do not have anything yet. So we're assuming everybody's coming back. And then until further notice, we'll let you know if that's
quick
changed.
Update, I guess, on the women's hockey portal, which has officially opened. Lucas did tweet out, I believe today, that he will be keeping everybody updated on the Beaver Territory Twitter page. So if you're on Twitter and you follow Lucas, he will be providing updates for that as best as he can. So, and we'll try to do the same. If you're in the Discord, which you should be, join it. Anything that we see, anything that you see, feel free to share in there. because it's just a good place to keep information. So if we see anything about transfers coming in or going out, we'll be sure to post in the Discord and on our Twitter, repost something or like something that might be spreading around. But yeah, that's kind of the end of those winter sports. Men's hockey's, fortunately for us, made it at least another week. So we have another week at least of talking about winter sports. But we do have some spring sports that have been happening over the last couple of weeks while we've been ignoring it. Baseball has officially gotten their season underway. I don't know if they'd even played a game by the time we talked about them
They had not. No, because theirs got weathered out because they were going to play someone like Valentine's Day or something.
Yeah. February 14th, 15th, and 16th got canceled, and then they've played 10 games so far, and they're 1-9, unfortunately, in those 10 games.
They got some ugly ones in
there. Yeah, some ugly ones in there, but they did. They got a win to start the year, so that's good. And we'll see. We'll see what happens down the stretch here. They're now into NSIC play, jumping into it quick, as most spring sports do. There's not a whole lot of time for spring sports to get going up here in the Midwest. So we'll see. We'll keep monitoring them as the season goes along. But yeah, I don't know if you have any other news to report about the baseball team. Any positive news, CJ?
You put the caveat with that. But I will say May 7th is when the NSIC tournament starts for baseball. It is, as of recording, it's March 11th, which means that you have less than 2 months. And I know they started a couple weeks ago, but you have less than 2 months to cram in an entire 30-some game baseball season, which is a lot. Now, I know baseball, you can do double headers, you can do some of that other stuff, but you get my point that they have not a lot of days to cram in a lot of games. And yeah, it ends up kind of like that. I feel like it's just worth mentioning Bemidji State did get no hits on Sunday when they lost 15-0 to receiving votes Augustana, because a friend of the podcast, Marcus, who we interviewed a couple of years ago, I was trash talking him for Bemidji State beating Augustana in the CCHA tourney, and he immediately responded with sending me that no-hitter alert from Augustana. Not quite the game you want to have. Augustana's a good baseball program, but if you could avoid that next time, that'd be great. Obviously,
they're saving them up. They're just saving them.
That's saving them up, right? Obviously, I can barely avoid getting no hit playing amateur ball in the middle of nowhere. But you know what? I could probably, as one little league coach to another, one little leaguer to another. If you just maybe get your hips back or something.
Yeah.
If you just get the elbow up a little bit more, kind of bring the bat a little closer to you, take the high leg kick out. I think maybe that'll. I think maybe that'll change things. Don't listen to me. But yeah, they play Wayne over the next week. They got a 4-game series at Wayne. Then they go down to Marshall the next weekend. And then we're kind of getting close into March. Then they finally, first home game on the schedule is March 29th. I'll believe it when I see it, that they're playing a home game at the BSU baseball field on March 29th. Yeah. That may be a home game that's played in Winona, but we'll see. Softball, though, to this point in the season, they've played 19 games, Ian, and they have a 500, plus 500 record at 10-9 before they have one more stretch. And then it is going to be in the middle of their NSIC play. But they currently are 2-2 in their last 4 games. They had just some games going on today. They lost 8-4 to Bentley University, lost on Monday to Northwood 2-1 before getting a big 18-1 victory over Point Park University in Pennsylvania. This is, again, all in a tournament played in Clermont, Florida. Bemidji State still playing in Florida. They have games as of this recording against Lake Erie College that's taking place.
They're up 1-0. Top of the first.
All right, there we go.
As of recording this, of course, this will all be over by the time you hear it. But yeah, they're up 1-0 so far.
They played
in the top of the first.
Queens College on Thursday, University of Indianapolis on Thursday, Emporia State of Michigan on Friday, and St. Martin's University on Friday as well, before taking the week off, and then March 22nd on Saturday, opening up NSIC play. Now, I will believe that they will play it in Bemidji. It will not be played on the softball field. It will most likely be played at the Chet for their first home softball games of the season, as is tradition. But no, a good start for the softball team. Just non-conference games are always so hard to gauge, especially in these tournament settings. But I think the fact that they've been able to hang around that 500 mark, I think has just been a good sign for the program.
Absolutely. Yeah. And record breaking, I believe, 18 runs in that game yesterday against Point Park University in Pennsylvania. Well, of course, the game was in Florida, but that's where the
Point Park University of Pennsylvania. Yeah.
It only took 5 innings as well to get up to 18 runs.
Mercy
and if
rule.
we're talking about saving hits, maybe they should have done that, because they tweeted out themselves after that 1-2 loss the next game. They're like, well, at least we got 18 runs in the last game or something.
If you combine their 2 games, they averaged 10 per. So
yeah, I mean, that's a great offensive production. They should have saved even just 2 of those runs for the next game. But
on average,
the record is better than the win, I think. I don't know what the record was. Maybe they would have still had it with 16. So we could have had both. But
who's to say?
Who's to say?
Who's to say? Yeah, they get ready. Any other spring sports we kind of need to go around Bemidji on?
Tennis has played, I believe, 1 match since we last spoke. They beat University of Minnesota Morris to improve their record to 4-3 on the season. They get back in action in 9 days from the recording here on March 21st against Sioux Falls and Augustana the next day on Saturday. Those are in Fargo. Men's golf and women's golf both getting underway as well. As of today and yesterday, no stats input yet for yesterday's events, but the men are at the Maverick Spring Invite, and the women's golf is in both teams are in Arizona, I should say. These golf tournaments are not being played in the southern Minnesota. Goodyear, Arizona for the men, Litchfield Park, Arizona for the SMSU Spring Invitational for the women. So, yeah, there's that. And then I guess the only other thing of note that I have, as the Beavers take a 2-0 lead in the top of the first in the softball game. And the only other thing I have to report is just that Issa Parekh was officially named to the all CCHA rookie team this morning. So congrats to him. He really deserved it. He played phenomenally this year. Of course, we talked about a couple weeks ago, it's hard to live up to the expectations that Kyle Loft and Eric Polkamp filled, and even before them, Will Zmolik and Elias Rosen. But he's done a good job here in his first season. I think I don't know exactly what point total he's at. He's probably over 20 now, because I think he was at 18. I have to imagine the last couple of weeks he's gotten at least 2 points since we've spoken last about it. So
he has 18 points.
He does still. Okay. Well, never mind.
I don't know if they count the postseason points.
They might not.
I think they're just counting regular season here for this. But yeah, that and Vince Corcoran also getting named to the CCHA Weekly Award as the league's defenseman of the week. So some Beavers getting some accolades here, which is always good.
Right on. Can't wait for the game in Mankato, man. It's going to be a big one.
There's still some tickets on sale for visitors, according to the Bemidji State website. So go to bsubeavers.com for more information on that. Go down to Mankato. Please humble them. Humble them just a little bit, because I'm still not over that football game, Ian. I still lay awake at night, not because I have a crying 10-month-old baby, but because I lay awake at night because of that ending of the Bemidji State football game in Mankato. They had a chance to win, and they just couldn't quite come away. Time to get some revenge on the ice, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had this whole bit planned out as the Beavers take a 4-0 lead in the top of the first in softball, where 5-0, actually. Sorry.
Let's go.
Let's just keep piling on.
Keep piling it on. Yeah, awesome.
I had this whole bit planned out where I was going to start screaming on the podcast and say, they got to stop getting the better of us in huge games. I'm sick of losing to these guys when it matters most. And I mean, it really depends on your definition of a big game. But I think there's been 4. This is probably the 5th instance of a big game that we've played against Mankato in any sport across the last 5 or so seasons, including last year's McNaughton Cup game, I should say, where we won 6-0.
The cup clincher,
the football game, which of course we lost earlier this season. The Mason Cup game, which of course they won twice in overtime, and then the women's soccer game in the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. So we're actually 2-2 against them in big time spots. Now, how many of these playoff games, hockey regular season games, do you consider big games? Or same with football? Yes, you can consider a lot of those big games.
Depends on what pushes my agenda, Ian.
Exactly. So I'm going to stick with 2-2 in big games. This is the rubber match for game 5 right here. Let's take it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do this thing. As I'm looking here at the 5-0 lead here for Bemidji State, Maddie Kalsmeyer has 2 RBIs. Callie Richards drove in 1. Amy Christensen drove in another. So, hey, let's go. They are saving all the runs for today, apparently. That's what they were doing.
I haven't seen another run pop up in like 60 seconds or so. I'm kind of concerned about them right now. What's happening?
It's a good sign to see this softball team get again. It's so tough to judge a non-conference because we have no idea how good any of these teams are.
With that being said, I'd rather win.
I'd rather win them than lose them. Games. Yeah, exactly. It's better to go into a winning record because last year they didn't. It was a slightly below 500 record heading into NSIC play, and for them to go in with a little momentum positively would sure help out a lot. All right, That's going to do it for me. I'm CJ Baumgartner. That's Ian Rivers. Again, go check out the Beaver Banter Discord because it's going to be buzzing come Saturday. We'll see you guys next time.